Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, every place where you're tuned on to the Life Signatures Radio, whatever continent it is that you are in, welcome to another episode. This is episode number 1550. It's a milestone, come to think about that. We keep going, we keep sharing. Yesterday, we started a new series. Remember, this podcast is always going to be about purpose, productivity, and resilience. Every working morning, you're going to find this. By the grace of God, you're going to find an episode to listen to motivate you, to inspire, to instruct you, to rebuke you, whatever it is. But this is about purpose, productivity, and resilience. And yesterday we did start a new series. We're talking on a subject that I think is one of the most critical subjects we need to talk about. This subject is about leveraging on the law of unseen increase. And I caught myself yesterday saying that as long as there is the law of unseen increase when you're doing things, there is also the law of unseen decrease when you're doing nothing. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue and just talk about this. If you go through Google, if you went through any search engine, okay, maybe if you go through ChatGPT also, you might not come across this law of unseen increase. Just go and Google the law of unseen increase. It might bring you one of my articles on the Life Signatures podcast, on Life Signatures blog. But if you go through Google, you might not see this law of an unseen increase. I just coined it. I just came up with it. Just caught myself talking about that. But it is from the different experiences that I've had in my life, in very many areas of my life, my spiritual life, my physical life, my mentality. Every time I exert myself physically, mentally, spiritually, or any pursuit of life, the law of unseen increase is in operation. And I can add and say that every time I am not exerting myself in those areas, the law of unseen decrease is also at play. Let's talk about working with plain sight. Remember yesterday we said that we interact in this world with our five senses. The problem with humanity is that we are structured to be motivated by what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we experience by these five senses. That's where our motivation comes in. If something does not go through those senses, something is not captured within those senses, if it's not in the domain of the net of these five senses, what happens? We do not necessarily perceive it to be important enough to motivate us. We don't even want to count on it. In fact, we want to quit. We want to quit because we don't see, we don't hear, we don't feel, we don't smell. What's the other sense? We don't touch. Fortunately or unfortunately, the law of unseen increase is always at play. Always. Every time any action is done, that law is at play. Today, you are listening to this podcast, this episode, that law is at play. That law is at play even as I am recording this episode. You might not pay me for this episode, but there is an increase, an unseen increase happening somewhere. And someone might say, but Lawrence, please give me a break. This unseen increase doesn't pay my bills. It doesn't settle my rent, arrears, doesn't pay school fees, doesn't put fuel in my gasoline tank, doesn't put data on my phone. This unseen increase. You see, that's the biggest problem that we have today. We go to life directly looking for things that can be able to pay bills. And in so doing, we have a trade-off. We might not be able to grow. We might get the money, but we might not be able to grow. But then another thing that we also need to realize is that these things are legit. The fuel in the tank, the school fees, the data, the rent, arrears, they are legitimate things. We interact in this world with currency, with money. And therefore, it doesn't mean that we go to one extreme just looking for money. I think one of the biggest balancing acts that we need to have in this life is to balance between getting the money to pay our bills and leveraging on our potential and pursuing of our purpose. And this is where the law of unseen increase comes in, and also unseen decrease comes in. That the more I continue marveling and the more I continue molding and I continue this momentum of the unseen increase, it's going, like I said in the episode yesterday, to create a critical mass. So much so that that critical mass can now become value enough to become currency. It's basically the analogy of planting a tree. It takes 10 years for the tree to mature. That's let's just call that the unseen benefit, the unseen increase. Of course, the tree is going to be seen, but I'm just saying that use that as an analogy. That you probably, it takes 10 years for the tree to grow. It might also take 10 years for this law of unseen increase to operate in your life and in my life. So we've got to be faithful. And on the side, doesn't mean that that's all we're doing. On the side, we're balancing. We're looking for other avenues of making money directly, but we don't put down our purpose. We don't put down our potential. We don't put down the things that are inside of us that are supposed to grow, that cannot be cashed today. You might not be able to cash in on your voice today. You might not be able to cash in on your talent of playing guitar today. You might not be able to cash in on your episode on this podcast today. I might not be able to cash in on it today. It doesn't mean it's useless. See, we need to look at the validity of the things that we do from the angle of where are they coming from. Are we passionate about them? Are they inspiring us to do them? This podcast, why? Tell me, why would I stop podcasting? Why would I stop doing what I'm doing every single day with this podcast just because I'm not getting paid for it? Why would I stop? I will only stop because I am doing this podcast to earn money primarily. That's why I will stop. And in so doing, what have I done? I have curtailed the law of unseen increase. The intangible. There are some things that are happening in this podcast and I don't know, in the background that I don't know, that I might be able to cash in. But let me tell you this. I have come to the place where I've realized this. That if this podcast is going to pay me, or if it's not going to pay me, it doesn't matter. I will stay here. I will still do this. That's just something that I've decided. I cannot see myself divorcing myself from this. The problem with humanity is that we are structured to be motivated by what is seen, what is felt, what is heard, and what is experienced by our five senses. And if something does not go through those senses, then we don't necessarily perceive it to be important to motivate us, so we stop it. But fortunately or unfortunately, the law of unseen increase is always at play. Every time an action is done, every time I take action, that law is happening. The action could be the beginning of something new. Or it could be a continuation of something that is existing. It could be an action in returning to take action on something that after you've given up some previous weeks, that maybe you went and rested. It could be an action that you're taking just to continue what you had started some time back. You had a startup and you ran through a wall and you couldn't, and you got discouraged. You could be taking action today towards that startup again. The law of unseen increase is at play there. Let me say this. Every action generates an ounce of increase that is undetected. It's unfelt. It's unseen with our natural senses, our natural eyes. But that does not mean that the increase was not there. It was. It will always be. It is just that it has not matured for us to perceive it enough with our physical eyes or our physical senses. The law of unseen increase states that against the pain, discomfort, and seeming negative effects that action generates, there is always a positive increase in the unseen realm. Always. Always. As in, you don't see, you don't feel, you cannot touch, you cannot sense it, you cannot smell it, but it is there. That is the law, my law, of the unseen increase. Maybe I should write a book about this. It will always be there. It is always going to be there. But you see, now that's a problem, because we almost always focus on the pain. I talked about this in the previous episodes, in the previous series. We almost always focus on the pain, we almost always focus on the discomfort, almost always focus on the disappointment. We don't focus on what is happening in the background of the pain or the setback or the heartache or the discomfort or the shame or the embarrassment. So what do? We quit, unfortunately. But I'm here to guide us, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to guide us not to throw in the towel just yet, to stay here, to hang in a little bit, because even when you are ashamed, there is something that is happening in the unseen realm, intangible, immeasurable, that is on the positive side. When you feel a distraction, when you feel an embarrassment, when you feel a discomfort, a setback, I think it's Napoleon Hill who said that for every problem, I think there is an equal. Any setback, there is an equal. Let me look for it. Verbatim, Napoleon Hill said, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed. That's it. The seed of an equal or even greater benefit. So please, maybe you should not quit just yet. There is the law of unseen increase happening in the background for your sake, right? It might be that if you just stay put, let the momentum continue, and let the law of unseen increase happen, you just never know. You just never know. What is there to lose anyway? Because if you quit, what are you going to? You're going back to the status quo. We talked about this in the previous series. Going back to the status quo, which is the enemy of your progress and success. Tomorrow we're going to continue talking about these things. Until then, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.